I wrote an article on the same title, World Heritage Sites in Danger. Now, this article was published in the Lokmat Times of Aurangabad in this edition. From that time, I was just, it was in my mind that this is a very important subject, but it is very neglected. Because everybody is talking about the heritage sites, its importance and all. Have we ever thought about the other side? So during that time, we used to go to the study tour. Nowadays, we have the research tour. But that time, we had the study tour, and we were going to the World Heritage sites, visiting the sites throughout the country. So I remember then when we used to go to Taj Mahal, so I used to observe that there is some problem in Taj Mahal. So I started to document. Actually, I'm also a photographer. My exhibitions are where I used to shoot the monuments. Then I thought about some shooting some problem areas. So photographic research I started. So in that I documented some photographs. In which showed that actually the Taj it is sinking. You will not believe this, but when you go to the Taj Mahal, you find the pathway. It has already sunk, right? It is sinking at some parts. Actually, it is located on the river side. So the plinth is also going down. But it is not like I am also a physicist, also a scientist working on the Ministry of Science and Technology projects. So from that perspective, which I've seen, that the minarets of the Taj, one of the minaret it is tilting at a certain angle. It was just in some centimeters, but just imagine if there would be an certain an earthquake, what would happen? It will come down. So similarly, I started to write. So I wrote a research paper and I presented this paper in Gwalior. It was in 1999. So the title was Visitor Management System at Taj Mahal. How I studied the impact of the visitors at the Taj Mahal, how visitors make an impact. Now, because at a time, thousands of tourists are there at the Taj Mahal. This aspect I studied. Now, here, coming back to the topic, today we are going to discuss about the World Heritage Sites in Danger. Actually, you know this. What is a World Heritage Site? Or maybe the other speakers they have already told you about that. But I'll put it in a very simple term. Technically, the definitions are very different. But especially for the students, I will put it in very simple terms. Any cultural or natural site having outstanding universal value. Outstanding universal value. Right? It can be designated as a World Heritage Site by the UNESCO. It might be a cultural site or a natural site or a mixed site, cultural and natural. So any site can become a World Heritage Site, but it should have an outstanding universal value. Actually, there are 10 criteria. Out of that 10 criteria, the site should have at least one criteria. It should pull at least one criteria. We have seen that since the decade of the 70s, UNESCO started designating the sites as World Heritage Site. And today, worldwide, today we have, yesterday I got the official figure, there are 1,121 World Heritage Sites in the world. Out of that, 869 are the cultural sites, 213 are the natural sites, and 39 are mixed sites. So we have a huge amount of the sites worldwide. So when we come back to India, we find that as on date today, we have 38 sites in India. 20 are cultural, 7 are natural, and one side is the mixed categorization. When we come to Maharashtra, the state of Maharashtra, we have 5 sites. And in these five sites, we have four cultural sites and one is a mixed site. Sorry, one is a natural site, that Karst Plateau, right? So, as Dr. Samant has already told you in the earlier uh, lecture, that Ajanta and Ellora, they are the first World Heritage Sites of India. So, we have again the sites of national importance. I am coming to the categorization, World Heritage Site. Then at the national level, ESI has designated sites of national importance, protected monuments. We have over 3,000 monuments, like over 3,000. So again, we have the state protected monuments under the state government, like in Maharashtra, we have the Department of Archaeology and Museums. So they are having their own sites. And again, at the local level, we have certain temple committees or the Dargah committees which are having these sites under their control. So all sites, monuments in India, they are already categorized, and there is a particular body or organization which looks after that. Now, these are the sites. Now, what is the importance of World Heritage Sites? Now, the students, I will give you some examples. Like when you got the designation of World Heritage Site for Ajanta or Ellora or for Taj Mahal or Khajuraho, do you know that all these sites before some years they were neglected? Just to tell you about the most popular monument of India, Taj Mahal. Actually, it is a mausoleum. Technical term is a mausoleum. A mausoleum is a place where somebody is buried. So we find that the popular stories there, Shah Jahan and Mumtaz and all stories are there. It is a very beautiful building. But again, as somebody is buried there and as the Mughals shifted the capital from Agra to Delhi. So literally the town of Agra was literally abandoned some 100 years ago, 100 years ago. And very few people lived there. So again, there are some evidences that when the Britishers, when they again found this location of Taj Mahal, it was in the shrubs, and there were creepers and climbers all over the monument of Taj Mahal. Right? But actually, what I want to say that it was a neglected monument. Again, Ajanta or Ellora or Khajuraho, very popular monument site, heritage site. These were neglected. But since 1983, when Ajanta and Ellora got the designation as World Heritage, after that, the Red Fort of Agra, and then the Taj Mahal of Agra. And then there is a long list. So when this sites got the status of World Heritage, we find that whatever you have learned in the basic papers of tourism, like the socio-economic impacts or the because of this designation of the monuments, we find there is a positive socio-economic impact in the region. After that, you will find that there is regional development, or there is employment generation, or there is earning on foreign exchange. So these things which we are teaching in the class, actually they are found at the sites. And we know that India is a cultural tourism destination. It is because of this culture, tourists come here. Then there are several other attractions here, the seashores and beaches, and whatnot. Literally every attraction of the world is found in India. People are also going there. But now, this is very important, these cultural sites, we find this kind of impacts are there. People go to a particular country for that particular reason. Visit this cultural sites, visit the natural sites, like in the African continent, that countries, we find the natural sites are there. People will move to that regions as tourists. So now here, just imagine, the sites are there, tourism is there. Nowadays we are facing the pandemic. But forget the pandemic. If we find that, just imagine, as I told earlier, there is an earthquake, and one of the minarets of the Taj comes down. The cave of Ajanta comes down. or temples of Khajuraho, they come down. What will happen? Nobody will visit these sites. There would be no tourism. So actually, these particular monuments, if they are now the attraction of Taj Mahal is the symmetry. Shahjahan and Mumtaz is not the attraction. The symmetry of the Taj Mahal of that building is the main attraction. Marble is not the attraction. White marble. The symmetry of that particular location, the particular monument, it is the attraction. Perfect. But now, if that perfection is lost, people would not visit that. Again, you'll find the same thing. If the cave of Ajanta is coming down, or the temple of Kailas is coming down, it would be in the ruins. Nobody will visit that location. Same thing happens every day. So, monuments, they are always at a threat, right? And because of this kind of situation, we will find that local economy will come down. Again, the multiplier effect would be there, that everything will come down. Economic slowdown would be there. There are so many issues. Now, we can identify that out of 1,121 sites, there are certain sites which are in danger. UNESCO and ICOMOS identify the sites which are in danger. Like till date, we have identified 53 sites. 53 sites of the world, they are identified as danger. They are in the danger list. And what will happen if they are in the danger list? Now, it will not only be an economic loss, but it would also be a cultural loss because the site is in danger. Now, what are the causes of the danger? Now, we find that there are in certain locations of the world, there are the armed conflicts. There is a warlike situation, or the actual war is there. We find that the earthquake is there, or other natural calamities are there. So, natural calamities, earthquakes, floods, and so many things are. We find pollution is there. Pollution is a very important factor. Pollution is there. Poaching is there. Poaching in the wildlife sanctuaries, national parks, especially in the African continent. Then we find that there is uncontrolled urbanization at that sites. Urbanization. Because of the situation, because of the tourism potential, urbanization is there at that particular location. And we find that haphazard development, unchecked tourism development is there at that particular site. I can give you so many examples. Like take any hill station of India, unplanned development is there, uncontrolled urbanization there. So technically, as this presentation lecture is for the students, I will talk in a very simple terms. But technically, danger it is ascertained, like in a specific and proven conditions are there, or threats are there. When we see that, when we ascertain that particular site it is having some threat, then it comes under the danger list. Then there is a potential part. Potentially, the sites are in danger. Like it might have a negative impact on the World Heritage values, the 10 criteria which are given here. If affect these values, then it would be a potential threat. So technically, we know that the ascertained danger is there and the potential danger is there. Now, to make you understand, I will give you two examples. Now, we are observing we are in the month of Ramadan, holy month in Islam, and there is a place, Jerusalem. So the place is Jerusalem, and in that place, the technical name of the site, now it is under danger. It has been come under the danger list. The technical name is the Old City of Jerusalem and its walls. Old City of Jerusalem and its walls. Now, actually, the city of Jerusalem It is an holy city for three major religions, that is Judaism and Christianity and Islam. All major religions of the world. For three of the religions, this place is very religious, very sacred. Like the city, old city has over 222 historic monuments. 220 monuments are there in this old city. And almost, the most important monument is the Dome of the Rock. It is constructed in the 7th century AD. It is having like the geometrical and floral motifs on the dome. You can see the photograph sometime on the net. And it is sacred for all these three religions because it is the site of Abraham's sacrifice. Abraham, as you know, is a prophet, and all these three religions believe in him. In Islam, he becomes Ibrahim. In Christianity and Judaism, he is Abraham, right? So this place is sacred because it is the place it is recognized as the site of his sacrifice. The second is the Wailing Wall. You might have seen it in the photograph. People come at that wall. They wail, they cry, they have their feelings, they become emotional. This is the second side, important side. And the third is very important. The third, it is believed, it is the tomb of Jesus Christ. And it is located in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. This is the actual church where it is believed the tomb of Jesus Christ is. Now, this important location, can you believe that it is in the danger list in World Heritage? It has come in the danger list. Why it has come? It is because of several reasons. You know that there are so many political differences. There are so many tensions in that location. Warlike situation is there. Every time there is a conflict. So this holy sacred city, holy city, has come in the danger list. We don't know what would happen if the city is lost, if the city is destroyed by the natural or the potential threats. What would happen? We will lose an important site for three religions. This is the danger which I wanted to tell you. Actually, there are 53 sites, but I am just taking a few sites. Second site I would like to highlight here. The technical name, it is in Afghanistan. It is a very popular site. Most you might have seen it in the movies. Location, especially in the Feroz Khan movies. There is a song picturized on that particular valley. And the technical name is the cultural landscape and archaeological remains of the Bamia Valley. We know that this particular valley, it was a very important location in the ancient India. And this valley, it represents the artistic and religious development from the 1st to the 13th century. Can you imagine 1300 years? This valley was prosperous. We find that it is the place where the Gandhara form of art it developed. Now Gandhara technically, if you know, it is from the Greek origin, Bactrian origin. The Greek art and the Indian art, it was fusion, it was merged. The new school of art named as the Gandhara school. Because Gandhar is a place in Afghanistan, today's Afghanistan, Gandhar. You can also have these references in the Mahabharata. Gandhari, she came from Gandhar. So now this important location, it has a history, continuous history of 1300 years, where this art form developed. Again, the art form, it is from the Greco-Roman empires to the Southeast Asia. Right? So this art form. And again, along with this, we find the Gandhar art in form of the sculpture, specifically the cultures. And in this location, in this valley, we find there are a number of the Buddhist monastic establishments, Buddhist sanctuaries. Now, we also have some fortified edifices of the Islamic period, later period. So these sites are there. But you know about the Bamia Buddhas, these are the huge statues which were carved in the mountain. And it was very unfortunate event in the history of the world. Most unfortunate. It shocked the world. It was in March 2001. 2001. Now we are in 2021. So during in that month of March 2001, you might be knowing about the Taliban. The Taliban, these people, they don't believe in the idols. Now, due to the hatred of a particular person, particular religion, particular idol, which is in their country, they brought the rocket launchers and they shot the Buddha statues for several hours. It was more than 24 hours. The entire statues were destroyed. Now, this is something which can be done by the fanatics. This is how the heritage was lost. Very important heritage. It is not only the Buddhist heritage, it is the Greco-Roman and the Indian heritage. Coming from that region to this region to the Southeast. So this heritage was lost because of the fanatics, because of the people who don't believe in a particular religion. Now, the point what I want to tell the students, everybody, what happens if the heritage is lost? If the site is lost, what will happen? You will not understand it right now, right? But I will give you an example to make you understand. What happens when a site is lost? You go back to the ancient period. Now we are sitting in Aurangabad. I am from Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Marathwada University. You are sitting in Pune or some other locations. You are in the Vishwakarma University. You can see some students from other locations. They've also joined. We are in the different locations, but we are the students, we are the teachers in some universities. And to tell you, if you know that India is the only place in the world which has the first universities. First universities in the world, they were established in India, ancient India. Takshashila, now it is in Pakistan. Nalanda, most famous one. Nalanda, Takshashila, Vikramshila, Ujjaini, Udantapuri. So many universities were there. I can just make a list. It is more than 26 universities in the ancient period, in India. So now, to tell you about one university, one site of Nalanda. The site of Nalanda was often visited by the Buddha, Tathagata Buddha. He was a teacher. So when he's during his lifetime, he has several times he has visited that location. But later on, that location, after the establishment of the Buddhist faith and all, then a university was constructed there in the later period. And this university had 35,000 students, resident students, right? And 7,000 teachers, professors, teachers, instructors, and whatnot. So the academicians who are teaching, and students, like 42,000 people staying in that location. Actually, the town of Nalanda is a university town. Like when we were in Portugal, we found a 1200-year-old university. It is still there, University of Cambria. We had visited that university. It is still existing. But here in India, we find that University of Nalanda, after several hundred of years, we find that there is invasion by the people from all sides. And there was one invader who invaded India. You know that India was invaded for its wealth. And the wealth was in the temples. We know about the Somanath temple, how many times it was raided, was looted. Wealth can be gained again and again. It can be created number of times. A simple person who is filling petrol in the vehicles, Dhirubhai Ambani, his family can become the richest in the world, richest in India. He can earn in billions and billions and billions. Right? Wealth can be earned, but knowledge cannot be earned. If knowledge is lost, everything is lost. This is what I want to tell. So the invasion was over there. The people looted the temples and the wealth, but there was one Bakhtiyar Khilji. So now he invaded this part of the country and he destroyed the site of Nalanda University. And there are evidences. When this university was destroyed, it was burned, right? It came down. It is said that for 6 months the library of Nalanda was burning. Can you imagine 6 months how it was burning? So the invaders had an army. It said the army of more than 1 lakh soldiers were there. And for the cooking of the food for the soldiers and for the bathing hot water. So they used to put the books. Literally, they put the books into the fire. They used it as firewood. And for 6 months, it was burning. The monks were killed, the students were killed, some of them fled. They could save their lives. But the entire university was lost. It was looted. Everything was burnt. We find that what happens if a site, what happens if the site is lost? When we lost Ajanta, the knowledge of India went. It was lost forever. You can imagine it was the downfall of the Indian knowledge system from 1200 AD. We find that we had no knowledge left with us. There are other reasons. Books were lost, everything was lost, they were burned. And in India, we had Varna system. Four Varnas were there. Only one Varna was eligible to study, to take education. The others were, it was like there was no question of others of studying or gaining knowledge. So everything was lost in a day. And again, the language was Sanskrit. Now the day came that nobody was there in India who could read and write in Sanskrit. I remember some years ago, Smriti Irani became a minister and they revived the Sanskrit language. They introduced the Sanskrit language at every level. Revival of the language because over the years we lost the language. Again, we have revived it. So now the site was lost. The point is the site was lost, knowledge is lost. Everything was lost. We came backward. Again, we find the Indian system it is coming down and down. But that is another topic for discussion. But this happens when a site is lost. But now, coming back, what should be done now? If everything is lost, what can be done? The same thing happens today. There are no invaders, but the invaders have taken a different form. The invasion is not from a person, but again it is from like the pollution. It might be the pollution. Like I have listed down, what are the causes of the danger? Yeah, sites are coming in the danger list. So all these causes are there. Now these causes will definitely destroy this site. Sometime you will find that the entire site is lost. Now I told you about Nalanda. Again, there was a project, worldwide project. Several countries came together and they re-established the University of Nalanda. It is an international project. Amartya Sen became the first vice chancellor of this university. Again, it is going on, the
Did
international
I lost the
project.
connection? Or
You can hear me, Remy?
yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah, you can hear.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now that university is revived. We could revive the university, we can revive the other parts. But what about the knowledge? It is lost. Now, I'll give you one more example. What should be done? First, I will tell you at the global level. Now we have the organizations, UNESCO is there, or the other international organizations are there. So globally, we are taking some efforts, like in the case of the Bamia Buddhas. Worldwide archaeologists they came together and we are trying to revive, reconstruct the Buddha images and reconstruct the valley. A very long project is going on. It is almost 30 years the project is going on. Again, a similar effort was taken by UNESCO and the other organization about the restoration. Now you might be knowing about the Angkor Wat. Angkor Wat is the most famous, most important site, most important archaeological site in South Asia. It is in Cambodia. And what we find here, it is in kilometers the site, temples and all. What means a temple? What in Buddhist, it is a Buddhist temple. Angkor Wat. Angkor is the name of the place. And here we find the entire township. They are having thousands of temples. Again, this site is very important because it is having the remains of the Khmer Empire. Now, these people ruled in that part from the 9th to 15th century. And again, we find that in the last 100 years, there were so many conflicts, regional conflicts, struggle for the power. And in this, we find the entire monument, entire site was lost to us. And like people who are fighting with each other, they laid the landmines throughout the site. It was very convenient for them to hide because they are going for the guerrilla type of warfare. So they are staying in that location. And now again for the money, what these people they are doing, we find that they are excavating this sites. They are pulling down the statues of the Buddha and the others, and they are selling it in the international market. So that heritage that is going there. Then pillaging of these artifacts, archaeological sites. Because they sold so much in the international market. Because of the landmines, there is a blast again, the site is coming. But fortunately, the site is in kilometers. It's a very huge site. And we took means the world took the efforts for the peace. And once when the peace was established in 1993, UNESCO with the World Heritage Center, they started for the restoration of the site. From 1993 till 2004, for 11 years, the restoration was going on. Now we can find that partly the site has been restored, and now visitors can go to that site. So this can be done. Restoration of the sites can also be done, but it takes efforts. International community have to come together, and again to come together, the requirement to restore a site. It involves billions of dollars, billions of rupees. Who is having that money? Government, any government of any country, are they ready to invest that much amount? Answer is no. Nobody is ready to invest money. Nobody can invest money because it is investment with no returns. When people want to invest money, they want the returns. So this will never happen. But again, there are certain countries, there are certain organizations, there are certain people who literally donate for this kind of activities. Like to give you an example, I think Madam Sawant might have given you this example about the management of the Ellora caves. We got certain funds from the Japan Bank for International Cooperation. Since last 30 years, a project was going on, and we got nearly 1,000 crores in Indian rupees. The entire region we went for the development, for the restoration, and other works. So somebody funded us. That is the reason we could restore, we could conserve, protect the monument. Just imagine if the JPIC money would not have come to this site of Ajanta, or they would not have given the money for the Buddhist sites in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, what would have happened? The sites would have been neglected because we don't have money. Now, it is very unfortunate. Like when we have the heritage, now we are having everything in excess. Everything in excess means, like in India, population it is like 125, 135 crore. We don't know exactly. Many times the figure vary, but you can just get a count 125 crores. 125 crores people in one country. How many monuments should be there in one country? 10, 20, 100. How many? In India, we have more than 6,000 monuments, which are listed. 6,600 something monuments. That too under the ASI. And as I told you, these states and others. So literally, we have more than 1 lakh monuments in the country, which are having some uniqueness. You'll everywhere you just go away from your town, you go to the rural parts, you'll find hundreds of temples, hundred of sites which are in a neglected state, right? We don't have money for the conservation and all. So we are neglecting the monuments. So this is happening. But now here I would like to ask you what you can do. The government is doing their best, private sector is doing their best, or they are taking efforts, they are not taking efforts. We are not going to that. But on this day, World Heritage, World Heritage Day, International Day for Monuments and Sites, what you are going to do for your monuments? This is the question. What we can do? You will say that you are a simple student. You have no money in your pocket and you cannot do anything. You are helpless. I know this is the reply which would be coming from your side, from the student side, from the teacher's side. What we can do? We have nothing in our hand. Right? But the students, I will make you remember something. What we can do. The students have a very important role to play. The students can do wonders. They can change the world. Right? If you read the history, students have power in their hands. You use for in a positive manner, you can go for a positive change. I'll just make you remember it is hardly 2, 3 years you have left your school. But do you remember in your school, every day you used to take an oath on the pledge? Pledge is there. It is there in the all textbooks, state board, ICSE, and all boards. I remind you, India is my country. All Indians are my brothers and sisters. Third line is very important. I love my country and I am proud of its rich and varied heritage. I am proud of its rich and varied heritage. After that, we say, I shall always try to be worthy of it. I shall always strive to be worthy of it. Then there comes the parents and the teachers. I shall give my parents, teachers, and all elders respect. Greet everyone with courtesy. To my country and my people, I pledge my devotion. Very important. To my country and my people, I pledge my devotion. In their well-being and prosperity alone lies my happiness. So this pledge you have uttered hundreds of times in your school days. So don't you think that it is your duty? Forget what the people are doing, the country is doing, the government is doing, or the others are doing. No, it is your duty. You can protect, you can conserve your heritage, right? Because you are the students of tourism. Students of tourism. You can do wonders. You can at least stop anybody. You can at least stop if a brick is falling down. You can at least apply something and you stay there. Some small efforts you can take. Now you are the students from Pune. Now in the city of Pune, Shaniwar Wada is lost. A monument in the heart of the city was lost. Nobody is to blame, but it could have been saved. All monuments can be saved. If you are going to the forts, you are going to Panala or the Sinhagad or other locations around. What you find there, students and youths, everybody is going there, and they are respecting the monuments. No doubt, natural calamities and other factors are there, but again, the students and the youths, because we don't know, we are not made aware after your school. I don't think that we have ever sang the national anthem or we have ever taken the pledge. No, everything is gone. So you lose everything when you leave the school, when you leave the school. So now it is our duty. Like in our university, in our department, we put so many efforts. We have no money in our pockets, but our strength is our students. We are a team. Teachers and the students, when we come together, we can do wonders. We took a campaign, prosperity through tourism. We restrict the Corona within our reach, right? We took a campaign, prosperity through tourism. It was a tourism awareness campaign, and we made aware the people, the destination residents, about the importance of tourism, how tourism can change their lives, how they can benefit, socio-economic benefits and all. So we reached to the people, and till date we could reach like 2,800 people in the district, and they have changed their lives. A very positive change because of our students, because of our researchers. We could go there and we could make the changes. It doesn't require any money. It doesn't require any funding. But all it requires is a will and a person who can show you the way. He said that where there is a will, there is a way. I think the teachers are very good teachers. Madam is there, Aarti is there, Sandeep, Renu, and so many teachers, students are there. We have the other teachers. You can do wonders when sir is there. So you can take the initiatives. If you take the initiative, you can do wonders and you can change the situation. Just remember, if the heritage is not there, if the sites are not there, there would be no tourism. Pandemic will come and pandemic will end. That comes in 100 years. Pandemic. After this pandemic, again things would be normal. But again, think if there are no monuments, what would happen? Just think if the Eiffel Tower comes down. Eiffel Tower receives more than 10 crore tourists, international tourists in a year. Only one monument. Majority of the revenue for the French government it comes through Eiffel Tower. Only one place, one location. If the tower is coming down, there would be no tourists in France, in Paris. There would be huge losses. Same thing will happen to India. The Taj is lost or the prominent sites are lost. So therefore, this is a very important topic for you to understand, make you understand. I just took this topic to make you understand the importance of the sites, how we have to save it. So I will stop here because it's almost 45 minutes, and we have been hearing to the guest speakers. For instance, the last 4 5 days, it happens that mine was the last presentation. So at last you are free. Tomorrow is a Sunday. Today is a Saturday, but unfortunately, things are closed for you in Pune. So you have to rest and relax in your home, enjoy. But take care, everybody, and hopefully we will go through this phase of the pandemic. We will see the good days again. Thank you very much for inviting me here on this occasion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It was a beautiful talk, and I'm sure the participants are quite excited and inspired to have listened to you. Can we take a quick question?
Yeah, yeah, please.
Yes, I think is your mic okay?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know. Sir, I'll just read out the questions.
Okay.
Then the students is sir, as you said, sites costs a lot of money and manpower, but what will be the long-term effect of these projects on environment?
I am
Aarti,
not getting. Yeah,
Aarti
can
ma'am,
you
your
repeat?
voice,
Your voice is breaking.
Oh, my voice
sir.
is breaking.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll repeat the question, sir.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Sir, this one student has asked the question. Restoration of sites costs a lot of money and manpower. So she wants to know what will be the long-term effect of these projects if it is done. What will be the effect on environment?
Okay. I think wants to ask about the a lot of money is required for this restoration. First
Yes.
part.
First
Second
part
part.
is if it is done, I mean, if the restoration is done, what will be the effect of these projects on environment?
Okay. Actually, we have to conserve the monuments. Basically, it requires a lot of money and it requires the skilled manpower. Okay? So actually, we are not having that much manpower in India. Like we go for just restoration, conservation of the monuments. It is very different from the rest of the restoration. Like we are working for the Department of Science and Technology project. So we have taken a scientific heritage research initiative. Scientifically, we have to restore the monuments, and for that we require the manpower. So the manpower may be available in the country, but we have to hire the manpower from the foreign countries. Because just to give an example, one panel of a painting, like panel means 1 feet by 1 feet, 12 inches by 12 inches. If you want to restore that particular painting on the wall, on the ceiling, it takes like 3 months to 6 months. Only that piece of painting. It requires very highly skilled professionals. That is one part. And second part, from where you are going to get the money. From where now you require the funding for these projects. And the funding should come from the people. Now, India is a democratic country, everything you know. Like when we raise the fees, hike the fees of anything, there is a protest. Every time there are protests. But have you ever protested when you go to the mall, when you go for a movie in the mall, multiplex? Now the ticket of Ajanta Caves or Taj Mahal It is just 30 rupees, 40 rupees, 50 rupees, not more than 50 rupees, right? But if you go to the mall for a movie ticket, you pay like 400, 500 rupees, 10 times more you are paying it. But you are hesitant to pay it in the one. We'll never pay that, and we have made it free for the students, school-going students. The reason is why we have made it free because students should not be deprived of an opportunity to know about their own nation and heritage. That is why I just told you about the pledge. If you don't go to the monument, don't go to the site, you will never understand rich and varied heritage of India. That is one part. Now, the affordability is also there, but now I can see that things are changing. People have the paying capacity. People can pay more. People who cannot pay more, they can virtually visit the monument on the internet, on the smartphones. That is one part. So you can always have a means and ways for raising the funds, right? That is very unfortunate. I didn't want to tell you this. Now I just, because of the question, I have to tell you a very sad part of our system. For 30 years, or forget 30 years, for 20 years, we got 1000 crores from Japan. It was in phases, first phase, second phase. We got 1000 rupees from Japan over a period of 20 years. So how much did we get per year? Can anybody tell? Remy, in a year, how much we got? The voice is not.
So for 20 years, sir, it's almost more than a crore, sir.
How much?
More than 10 crores, sir.
10 crores.
Every year, more than that, more than that.
50 crores, sir.
50 crores. So 50 crores per year we are receiving from Japan for the first World Heritage Sites, Ajanta Nehru. Only 50 crores. And in my town, in my city of Aurangabad, the municipal corporation every year, this is through an RTI published in the Lokmat newspaper. RTI information sought by the Lokmat newspaper. In 1 year during the monsoon, the Aurangabad Municipal Corporation spends 120 crores to fill the potholes on the road. To fill the potholes on the road, the AMC is spending 120 crores. And here we are begging, or we are asking for the funds from Japan, nearly 50 crores per year. So this is how the things work here. We already have the funds, we can create the funds, but we don't know the value, where we have to spend it. You can spend it on the roads, on filling the potholes, but you cannot spend it on the conservation of the monuments. This is happening, and the reason behind this is because we don't have the trained professionals working in that organizations. In the municipalities and the municipal corporations, people are not trained. They don't know about the heritage. Forget the heritage value or not. We don't know about the ABC of heritage. It is everywhere in the country. So heritage is lost everywhere. Nobody wants to maintain the heritage. This happens many times. Right? I think the student might be satisfied with this. Second question.
There are a few more questions. So one question is about the overcrowding on monuments. What are its impacts?
Okay, overcrowding. Now, again, I will give you a very simple example. You go to a movie in the same multiplex, in the same theater, right? Is there overcrowding there? There is no overcrowding. Day before yesterday in our state of Maharashtra, what has happened? Break the chain, something is going on. And the local trains are available for the people on the emergency services, right? Atyavashyak Seva. What we find, all people are there in the train. There is no restriction. Forget the restriction. I have traveled hundreds of times in the railway along with my students, the sleeper class or E3AC or any category. Now, in a coach, it is meant for 72 people, 72 berths are there. But never in my life I have seen a bogie with only 72 people. It is always overfilled. Now, the railway has to issue that much, they have to sell only that much number of tickets. But liberally, we are selling the tickets. But it's the same thing when we were in Japan or in other countries. We were traveling in the bullet train, Shinkansen, or the other trains, even if it is a local train. So there, only that much number of tickets are sold. So the system is very effective. But here in India, this cannot be implemented. Again, the reason is we are already overcrowded. We are 125 crore in the country. The density of population is very large. Nobody can control it, right? There was one something like I just recollected that there was something sort of a joke or something hilarious, like a foreigner is coming to India and he's moving around throughout the country. He's finding all chaos, no traffic sense, or everywhere there is overcrowding. So many people are there. So basically, the person is an atheist. He doesn't believe in God. But when he traveled in India, then he told, "Now I believe in God." There is somebody who can run this country. The systems are working even after so many people. So we are Indians, and in India, these things will remain the same unless you try to intervene. Have you ever have you ever stopped any person from boarding the bus or the train? No. We always say, "Chalo, adjust kar lo." We're adjusting each other, right? So there are so many things. Now these are different from today's topic, but basically the thought process of the people have to change. It has to change, and we are at fault. Everybody is at fault. The system is at fault, and we are also at fault. Now you are the students. To tell me how many of you have never taken a third person on your bike? Everybody goes with 3, 4 students. They're traveling because it is chalta hai. You have to adjust. You cannot bring a new bike. You go in auto rickshaw. You will never play. You will never pay for a single person. You never hire that rickshaw with the meter. You will pay 5 rupees, 10 rupees, 20 rupees, and it would be overcrowded. So this attitude is there. It is like inborn.
Thank you.
Again,
Thank you, sir. There's again a question. In context with the recent fire behind the university case, I mean in the Aurangabad case, what measures would you like to suggest to avoid such incidents in near future?
okay. So what Aurangabad case?
Yes, behind the university case, where recently there was a fire.
Okay. There are two things. First is you should not smoke. Basically, youths when they are moving around, the boys and girls nowadays, everybody smokes. So you should avoid that. But basically, there are so many interests. People have vested interest in the property, in the land. They want to invest. They want to do some development works. Now, for that, there is a very simple solution. Just put the place on fire. If the place is on fire, then so many things move. You might have seen it in many movies. But again, I'm just reminded when I started with my lecture, I told you about the how I wrote an article and how I started thinking about the heritage and danger. So I was also working on the Aurangabad caves. So in the Aurangabad caves, I again wrote one article. Actually, it was a research piece. It was not published, but I wrote it. And one of my friend, the media, came to me and we just had a discussion. I told him about this, that this particular portion of Aurangabad caves is going to come down. And the reason I told, it was a scientific investigation. Throughout the year, there are no tourists at the caves. But on the day of, what do you call, Chakra Pravarti, as it is a Buddhist cave, so many people go there at the caves on the day of Dashera. So in a day, 1 lakh tourists, they will go there. And that time there was no ticket for the Indians. Everybody is allowed. So in a day, 364 days, there are hardly 10-15 tourists. But on that particular occasion, there are 1 lakh plus tourists. These people, they will climb the monument and come back. So I made a study of that impact. So it was a basically a research. Then I told that this particular part is going to come down. And according to my what is the word we can say prediction, unfortunately it came down. That my friend was knowing about my research, so he made a very big article in the Samna newspaper, and he told that this was bound to happen. This was already predicted by Rajesh Agrawal. So then it came down. Then the people from the Doordarshan. That time there was no this media. Doordarshan people came there also took the interview and they. But the point is now we should know. We should respect. Then what I did, I too belong to the same faith. But I told that we should not visit that monument on one day. I went to the ASI and then I told them this is happening. You have to restrict. Then after that they started with the ticketing of the site. So token of amount like 10 rupees, 5 rupees was there during that time. But somebody has to intervene to change the things. So we could do that. Similarly, we can do so many things. We can change. And there are vested interest in this fire and all. It is not natural fire, as we find in the United States or other parts of the world. Fire here, it is ignited by the people. Okay. Next.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Sir, one more question, sir.
Okay.
The question is there any provision for reserving some portion of CSR funds on heritage conservation and preservation? And adding on to that, sir, I wanted to know, should government take a step wherein CSR funds should be diverted to heritage conservation?
Okay. Now it is, you can ask our Dr. Babasaheb Jordan. He has done a PhD on that. But here, basically, CSR is a different game at all. It's a very different game. It is like giving the money from one hand and taking it back from the other hand. The actual concept of CSR, it is very noble. But now everybody has to give a particular share, some percent in the CSR. But now what happens, the companies, the big industrialists, they have made their own NGOs and they transfer their funds to their own NGOs. So it never reaches to the intended purpose. Purpose is very noble, the cause is very noble, but the funds are diverted again to the same group. It is coming back. Here we should understand the mentality of these people. Those who really want to give it to the society, do they really give it? There is a very big question mark. There are so many people, I have given this example many times. People have money in crores. They take bank loans, but they will never repay. When the matter goes to court, then in a single day, in a single minute, they will sign the check. 10 crores, 50 crores. This has happened with the most popular actor of India. It is on record. You know his name very well. People don't have a tendency to leave the money, to give the money. Actually, we have to teach them the art of giving. Everyone wants to accumulate more and more. So accumulate more and more, and one day Corona comes, right? Something like this happens. So again, it is only people. So they should actually this should be amended. This particular act should be amended and preserved as we have asked. It should be reserved for this kind of activities where we don't get the fundings. Now for education in India is highly subsidized. So through this CSR fundings, I don't know what happens. Like in the in there are some schemes of the government that some students with the weak financial background they can also enroll in schools. The schools of CBSE, ICSE, and all. Where the fee structure is very high. There is a compulsion, but they are never allowed to take admissions because they don't want the people don't the doesn't want this category of students in their school. So these things happen. So whatever things have to be done, it is from our side. We should be the change. We should be the medium of change. Right? Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So last question from one of our students.
Okay.
He's specifically asking in context to the example that you gave with regards to Jerusalem, and he wants to know like what are the political instability, what is its effect on the tourism of that particular country?
Political instability. Now you know
How,
about
how,
the. Huh?
how does political instability affect tourism?
Now this is just one example. Political instability is a very important factor in international tourism. Like some years ago, if you remember, it was in Egypt. In Egypt, there was a pink revolution, something like that. And the president of Egypt was removed, was ruling that region, that country for several years. He was Hosni Mubarak. And when there was political instability, so the people came on the roads, they hanged the president, whatever happened, complete chaos was there. But again, they looted the museums of Egypt. Museums were looted, the artifacts were looted. So there was no tourism for 2 3 years. Again, there is normalcy. The same thing happens between two countries, South Korea, North Korea. Suppose sometime it was India, Pakistan, Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, Pakistan, or India, Afghanistan. Between two countries, when things are not good, political situations are not good. And the classic example which I gave you is about Jerusalem. It is about Israel, Israel and the other nations. Israel is a country. It is landlocked, and there are several nations around the country Israel, which are Islamic nations. Now they are having a conflict. It is going on for years together for the issue of Palestine and Jordan and all. This political instability, because of this sort of warfare and all, we find the important religious pious places. We cannot go there. This is happening. So political stability should be there. It is not. It is again political instability. It is of two parts. Internationally also it is there, and again within the country. Suppose in our own state, sometime back we had the issue in Mumbai and other Pune and other places, like the outsiders and the locals, Paraprantiya, right? Because of this issue, we find that I was sitting in Delhi that time, and some situation arose here. The political leaders gave a call, and again we find that all of a sudden the people, the North Indians, they are fleeing the city of Mumbai and other places in Maharashtra. They are going back. So I was asked by my friends in Delhi, so should we come to Maharashtra or not? Again, we will be beaten and we will be forced to leave the state. This also happens in our own country. Like there are so many examples. There was a student from Aurangabad. He was selected in Assam, but he was selected in a university. He went there for the joining purpose. Then he was beaten and he was put in train to go back. This happens in your own country. It can happen with anybody. Right? Political instability is always there. For that, again, tourism is a medium. Long back, it was in like decade of 90s. There is a report of World Tourism Organization. That is the tourism passport for development. In that report, it is mentioned about the tourism, how it can foster international understanding and world peace. You should read that report. International understanding and world peace will come after tourism. When people will travel, because the hatred has been set in our minds from our political leaders. So once you meet the people from the opposite country, then you will find that we are all good. Everybody has likes and everybody likes each other's cultures. But again, we were trained, we were groomed in that manner that this is not good. It is between us and them. It is hatred. I still remember again. It is a very good question. Day before yesterday, also I was having a lecture in my university. We had the event of Mahatma Phule Jayanti. In that lecture, I mentioned that throughout my school days, I was never aware about the caste system. I was aware about the caste system, but I was never knowing about the caste of the my friends or the teachers and all. But once I came to the college, and after that, so many years, we have developed a mindset. When we had a reunion of our school, so once upon a time, for 12 years, for 10 years, we were so much attached to each other. But on the day of the reunion, it is very sad. We found that, I observed that the students are sitting in a group, not the groups which we used to stay in our school days, but they were sitting according to their maybe the communal aspirations or the community part. We are divided like that. No, it has been our minds have been groomed like that. It is so changed. So these things are fed in us from our school days. Nowadays it comes to the school days also. Again, this is one part which I told. But again, this thing again at a broader level, it is between the religions. So we find it is not only restricted to political instability. Then we find the communal riots. If it is not between communities, it is between the races. Races will go to the United States and all. We had this issue in the last year. If you might be remembering this didn't happen. So there is racism everywhere. So these all things have to means these are we are living with this thing in all these aspects. We have to change. And again, it is only the students here who can make a positive change. तुम्हीच हे बदल घडवू शकता बाकी कोणी करू शकत नाही तुम्ही जर तुमची सर्वांची मुद्दामून मराठीत बोलतो काही तुम्हाला मराठी स्पीकिंग दिसतात तिथे जर आपणच आपली सगळे मित्र आपण सगळे एकत्रित राहिलो apart from all affiliations then we can go for a positive change. Okay, then I will stop here because the discussion will go on and on.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I will request the head of the department, Mr. Aati Suryavanshi, to present a vote of thanks.
Thank you, sir. It was a very insightful session. I'm sure all of us have enjoyed it thoroughly. And with the kind of questions and the appreciation I see in the chat box, I am sure the students are absolutely elated to have you to hear you speak. I am again very grateful for you to that you accepted our invitation and you agreed to be a part of this series. With this, I would like to thank the team as well. The team has also done a absolutely commendable job of organizing this series. And I would conclude the series, the session of series. So we would definitely like to have you speak to us again on a different topic, so they can have more interaction in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.